I look back on the entire Medal of Honor franchise that was always a part of this medium I loved. There would usually be another Medal of Honor title. I was growing up during this time and I can remember each one of the games and can picture myself playing them for the first time even today. Whether it was the feel and gritty atmosphere of the PlayStation games, my first time storming the beaches through Frontline, and even playing at a doctor's office playing through Medal of Honor Heroes. I love this series, there's no doubt about that. I look at the current landscape today, and I see many things missing, many things from the past, types of games, and I think something like Medal of Honor is exactly what we still need and definitely could use with us today. EA still has the rights, and as far as I can tell, they have no idea what to do with this series, and the large amount of quality titles they could find a way to get back out there. Medal of Honor needs to come back. This sort of traditional first-person shooter should have come back, along with something that sort of just honors those who fought and died in many of those conflicts and battles. Medal of Honor Frontline may be a lot older today, but it is something that continues to stay strong over time.
Good morning, Lieutenant Patterson. It's a pleasure to see you again. You're looking well rested. Good. I'll need you in tip-top shape for your new assignment. You've proven to be quite resourceful, especially your performance most recently in scuttling U-4901. All things considered, you're the ideal candidate for this mission. So let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? The success of the Allied invasion of Normandy prompted an assassination attempt on the Führer. A cadre of high-ranking Nazi leaders planted a bomb during a meeting. Unfortunately, he survived.
When you look at titles and see, okay, how do I open this game? What is the player going to see and experience first? Frontline had a similar effect to how Saving Private Ryan was able to achieve just this. While yes, Frontline is teen-rated and not an R-rated movie, so the level of blood and gore is significantly less than what you would see in that film. I think the seriousness and atmosphere of the situation and the battle that is so well conveyed in how they made those sequences. A lot of this comes from the atmosphere, cinematic quality of the whole thing, and how the player is driving the entire sequence. It's not a cutscene. It's a playable part. This is the very start of the game. I think that has also been something that Medal of Honor has done very well. The original Medal of Honor on the PS1 was actually going to be much more violent, but was toned down because of the school shooting that occurred around the release of that game. I understand why they did that, and there might even be an argument for self-censorship there too, but I think these games' commitment to authenticity, you didn't really need that level of violence for these titles. I could see and especially feel the seriousness, danger, and very much the gravity of the fights. It's sequences like this that completely transports the player back there. Now you could argue which Medal of Honor game did this sequence better, as this was also done in Allied Assault. Personally, I think both did it very well. I don't need to choose, I love them both. The gameplay is great as you are dodging enemy fire, and really start to get into the nitty-gritty as you storm the bunker. Lots of close corridor action, enemies around almost every corner. It's intense. The presentation is firing on all cylinders with gun sounds that put many modern titles to shame today. I remember when Call of Duty Vanguard came out and how the guns in that title sounded much worse than something you would hear in the much older Medal of Honor games. When looking back at the behind the scenes for this series, you will see that there was a lot of focus on really getting the feel right, providing a fun game for sure, but there was an effort to educate the player along with maintaining, presenting, and respecting the authenticity. This is one of those situations where you feel it through every fiber of this game, and it doesn't hurt either that Michael Giacchino's soundtrack is providing the very same level of quality. This is top shelf type of stuff. I know often when we look at Medal of Honor, we think of this as a war shooter. You are placed in a conflict and are taking on and being within all of these bigger battles. And while there are plenty of instances of that, and even titles that focus more on those aspects, I very much see a key element that was in many of the first half of Medal of Honor games, where you see a soldier within the army, and then they get recruited into completing secret missions. You go from soldier on the ground to now being one who is working in a more covert nature. Cloak and Dagger and James Bond kind of stuff. You might weave into bigger battles, but your purpose is that you're on this very specific mission that plays a very big part in the overall war. It's exciting when this is done through you needing to be undercover. Maybe you are dressed within an enemy's uniform or something like that. It's an element that is missed in some of the later Medal of Honor games, and I think it's very important to the identity of the entire series. Frontline does make use of this, and while I would have preferred it to be more elaborate in this entry, I am happy to still see its inclusion here. Though the PlayStation Medal of Honor games, I think, do it a bit better than Frontline as it pertains to the disguise aspect to it. Medal of Honor just wasn't a war game, but it was a spy game as well. And even in Frontline, infiltrating enemy installations, it's a blast, and makes for a great backdrop to the fighting. It keeps a lot of the fighting very intimate. While not as grand as, say, the beginning of the game, it's just as intense. That mixture of action is another area that Frontline excels at.
Basically, the complete scope of Medal of Honor Frontline is one complete storyline, and it takes place between the 3rd and 4th mission of the original Medal of Honor. You resume the role of Jimmy Patterson, and the general goal, I guess you could say, of Frontline is you will steal a prototype jet known as the Ho-9 fighter.
One of the keys to the success of the Medal of Honor series has been its amazing realism. That even applies to the storylines.
The Ho-9 was an amazing piece of machinery that was completely out of the league of anything else that was there. It was potentially a weapon that could have turned the tide of the war. And it's basically a flying wing. It looks like a stealth bomber. You'd be surprised at some of the technology that came out of World War II that just seems so far-fetched.
This is a key thing too. We don't really see first-person shooters coming out now that are sort of paying respect to the troops and soldiers that fought in these conflicts. The big AAA industry isn't really doing this. Battlefield has moved away from it, or even making changes about history for some of their narratives. Or look at Call of Duty. It used to do this. Now they are more focused on that Hollywood action movie experience. That is all fine and good, but this has definitely left a hole for where Medal of Honor would fit right in. But we need the right developer leading the charge and a management group that doesn't really want to chase the latest trends. Yes, I want Medal of Honor to come back. No, it does not need to have multiplayer. Make it a single player only game. While there were good multiplayer parts in previous titles for Medal of Honor, I would argue that Medal of Honor was mostly a single player game. Go back to its roots, return to World War II, have us go on another mission with Jimmy Patterson, give us cutscenes mixing in beautiful concept art and war footage as a means for what we're seeing during our briefings, retain the secret agent aspects of those titles. Medal of Honor had a high amount of Bond influence, as you were both part of the war effort, but also doing things behind the scenes. Many of these older titles, like Medal of Honor Frontline, are great examples on how to do it right. If any of these ex-Medal of Honor guys are still at EA somewhere, pull them all into a meeting room and see what ideas they hash out. Medal of Honor Frontline, and honestly you can say this about the entire series, presents a better time, a traditional time, and I think we could use some more old-fashioned entertainment nowadays. I will tell you right now, if a new Medal of Honor came out made in the older style, I would jump to buy and play that. I think if we want this, we need to get louder about what we want. If you want Medal of Honor to return, whether it be older titles or a new faithful entry, we need to get loud with more social media posts, videos like this, showing that there is a fan base for this stuff out there and that we want it. If EA won't listen, there's a good chance that a worthwhile indie developer will. I am looking at Medal of Honor Frontline years later, and it still retains that specialness, the killer atmosphere, being a secret agent during World War II, the nostalgia of those mission briefings. It's always telling when you play an old favorite again years later. That game does have a chance of not holding up, shattering a bit of those older memories. But when that situation happens to be, that it's something that is held up considerably well, then that's the best possible possible of situations. I love Frontline, and I especially love this series. What are your thoughts on Medal of Honor? Have you played Frontline? Would you like to see this series return? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're interested in supporting the channel, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you can help to keep this channel going strong, and this allows me to be able to do more for my awesome audience. Please check out the links in the description and pinned comment for ways to support the channel. And most of all, thank you very much for watching.